Hello, my name is LoG. Welcome to part 2 of this 2 notes per string power-up. In this video, we will learn the second figure of the exercise, as well as go over some technical things in regards to pick angling that might help you in the process. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below. And now let's get on to the lesson. So let's do a real quick recap on the major shape that we learned from part 1, because the minor shape we're going to learn today, the structure is exactly the same. So if you have the structure down from part 1, today's shape is going to be pretty much the same thing. So let's recap. Sounded like this: major 7, sharp 4. Again, we're going to double this note, which will force us to lead with upstrokes. It's exactly the same thing, except we're grabbing the 3 on top instead of the 2. That sounds like this. Just like that, pretty straightforward. The minor shape is going to be, like I said, the same structure, except we are starting on B flat, up 1 fret, and we're playing minor. The general shape that we're playing is almost verbatim minor pentatonic, so if you're comfortable with this, that's mostly what this is going to be, except for 2 little changes on 2 of the strings. So that looks like this. First of all, notice the fingering that I'm using to play this. I'm not playing your standard like pointer, pinky, pointer, ring. I'm playing pointer, ring, pointer, middle, because one of the alterations on the D string, instead of playing these 2 notes like it normally would be for the pentatonic, I'm playing these 2 notes right here, reaching up here to grab the 2. So because I'm prepping like this, that stretch is not that awkward to grab. Whereas if I played it normally, I'd be playing normal, normal, and then have to stretch randomly on that D string. By playing like this, pointer, ring, pointer, middle, I'm already sort of in that stretched position, which allows me to grab that note a lot easier. So the notes from bottom to top sound like this: 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 2. There's that stretch, right? Flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, all normal from there on pentatonic, and except on the top we're playing 1 and 2 instead of 1 and flat 3 like the normal pentatonic would be. So let me play that one more time. And once we get here, it's exactly the same idea. We're going to repeat this note, turn around in the same way that we did the major shape, and once we get to the A string, we're going to go back to the D string, all the way down, A string, all the way down. The same kind of staggered idea that we did in the major shape in part 1. So let me turn around and come back. Stagger. Again. Just like that. So let me do the whole thing leading with downstrokes up and down. And then for the leading with upstrokes, exact same idea, doubling this note to offset everything. And of course, we're doing a little variation on the top note. So instead of playing 1 and 2, we're playing 1 and 4. This is a really great stretch to practice, because if you're not used to it, it might seem like a big stretch, but all you have to do is get the hand positioning right. It's a very valuable stretch, in my opinion, because you're able to play a 4th. That's 1 and 4. This is like a perfect 4th. And that interval can sound really, really good for certain phrases. And you just want it to kind of be comfortable in your hands, so you're not afraid to reach for that type of note, because it's a very valuable note and can sound really cool. And the stretch is not that bad once you get comfortable with it. So that's going to be the stretch that we're doing here on the top when we lead with upstrokes. That sounds like this. Again, doubling this note to offset everything. With the same sort of staggering, etc. So that's pretty much the whole thing. So again, normal minor pentatonic. The only difference, instead of playing flat 7, 1 right there, we're playing flat 7, 2. And then on the top, instead of playing 1 and flat 3, we're playing 1 and 2. And then for the variation leading with the upstrokes, we're playing 1 and 4, like that. Pretty straightforward. So how we're going to run this track, and I'll recap this here in a second, we're going to do the exact same thing as we did with the major, leading with downstrokes 1 time through and stopping. That sounds like this. Stopping, then we lead with upstrokes, doubling this note on the bottom to offset, grabbing that 4 on top, and then we stop. That sounds like this. And then we do 1 into the other. That sounds like this. that's that whole phrase. So we'll recap that one more time in a little while. But now that we have this new shape, let's dive into sort of some technical things that involve angling your pick depending on what stroke you're leading with that might help clean up your alternate picking. Okay, so I can't guarantee this technique is going to work for you, but I definitely think it's worth trying because a lot of people have definitely found some great success with this sort of thing. I have found mild success with it. I'm still kind of working through it, but I think it's definitely valuable to talk about. I've talked about this sort of thing in previous power-ups, but this power-up, it kind of applies perfectly, so we'll talk about it again. And that is angling the pick to favor whatever pick stroke you are leading with. So it's very simple. If I'm playing a downstroke like this, I want to tilt my pick this way to kind of favor that direction that I'm moving with. And then if I'm doing an upstroke like this, I'm going to tilt my pick a little bit this way, again, to favor the direction of that pick stroke. And this is why it's so important. Turn my neck a little bit. So if I do just straight downstrokes like this, or straight alternate picking, I mean, like that, right? The hard part, of course, is switching strings. And why is it hard? Because if you're moving your hand like this and you want to switch strings and not like plow into the next string on accident, what you're going to have to do is lift the pick to clear the string and then get to the next string. So let's say if I'm just doing like 2 notes here, 2 notes here, like that. Watch this. So 2 here, 2 here. Notice what I have to do. I'm picking down, up. Now notice where my upstroke is. Notice where that has just left me. If I just move straight down to the G string, the next string that I'm going to pick, there's a chance that I'm going to plow into the D string that I just played on accident because my pick is still kind of hovering in that same area. So what you sort of have to do during that upstroke, you down pick, upstroke, then you have to lift your hand a little bit to clear that D string so you don't hit on accident, and then move down to the G string to continue playing. This is what would happen if your pick is just straight like this, playing like that. That's why, you know, if I sit on one string, it's not hard to do that. It's only hard when I need to move to the next string, because instead of just the side-to-side motion of my hand, I now need to, again, lift the pick to clear the string and get to the next one. So now I'm introducing a different kind of motion for my hand, which is almost like a different set of muscles or different set of tendons or whatever, instead of just going back and forth, right? Going back and forth is very easy because you're just using one set. But the second you have to lift your hand, that now adds some extra strain on your hand that maybe is uncomfortable. And that's why switching strings can be awkward. So if I try to do like a 4-note little passage, something like this, I'm going to try to keep my pick and lift my hand every time. It's kind of hard to do because here I am very comfortable just fluttering my hand around on one string, and then I have to lift my hand to clear the string, get to the next one when I want to move. So this is why angling your pick solves that problem, because when you angle your pick like this, so if I pick like this now, notice my hand, it's one static motion of back and forth, but look where my pick ends up after I do that upstroke, down, up. Here I am ready to go to the next string. Look where my pick is. It's nowhere near the string. So all I need to do is just simply do a downstroke, and I'm going to hit that G string without accidentally hitting the D string, as long as I, shift my hand slightly down. But there is no extra like lifting up motion that I have to do because my pick is already up in the air after I do my normal pick stroke because of the angle that I'm choosing. So it's not like this. I'm not like, playing parallel to the strings. I'm actually angled so that when I do the downstroke, I'm going down almost like into the body. And then when I come back for that upstroke, my pick is way up here. No way that I'm going to accidentally hit those strings. So I could just simply go like that, come back into the next string. So that would sound like this. Here's my normal or kind of flat playing more parallel. Fine. And then here's me tilting. Notice it looks a little weird because my hand is kind of tilted, but it allows me to more kind of effortlessly switch through the strings. And again, I need to work on my accuracy because it does feel a little strange to do in the beginning, but physically, my hand is working way less than if I was just going like this. Because again, here I am fluttering on one string, and that's all fine and great. But the second I have to move to that G string, I need to lift my hand with just extra stuff that my hand has to do, making it a little bit more difficult physically. But like this, you just flutter around on the string with that same motion, and your pick is already in the air, so there's no way you're going to accidentally hit another string, as long as, of course, you're moving your whole hand down enough to get to that next string. So that's the concept here. So as we play any of the shapes that we've learned so far, experiment with tilting your pick in that way to move through the strings without accidentally plowing to a string. So if I play like the major shape, for example, see what I'm doing? Right? My pick is angled like that, which allows me to just kind of do the same motion back and forth, which is pretty effortless. It feels pretty good because it's the same motion back and forth. I'm not introducing like this motion halfway through. I can keep that going, and my pick is already in the air, allowing it to move to the next string pretty seamlessly. If I turn my hand, you can probably see a little bit better. So here's straight on. Here it is tilted. You see how high my pick gets? My pick gets so high, there's no way it's going to accidentally hit that string. So now it's doing this sort of thing instead of this sort of thing. There's also a little bit more of like a thumb action instead of wrist only, which you can definitely do. For me personally, I kind of like using a little bit more thumb when I do that. Can't tell you if that's the best choice, but that is kind of working for me right now. So I'll keep it going. It's the same exact thing with the upstroke, but maybe not as exaggerated as the downstroke, but the upstrokes are the same thing. So if I were to, again, just lead with upstroke normal, so that would be like up, down. Again, look at what's happening. If my pick is parallel to the strings, up, down, right? You see where my pick is right now? In order to get to that G string, I need to lift my pick and continue with the upstroke, right? I can't just, here's my downstroke. I can't just start an upstroke because I'll plow into the next string on accident. So if I have a little bit of a tilt this way, you see where my pick is now? So here I am, upstroke. And then when I have the tilt, I do my downstroke, and look where my downstroke is. Way above the string, ready to go to turn around to do that upstroke. So if I go... that sort of thing. The tilt when I do an upstroke is not as exaggerated as the downstroke. It's going to change for everyone. For me, if I try to tilt anymore, it feels like my thumb is like crammed into the body, which is awkward. But just having a little bit of a tilt like that allows me to do that downstroke leading to the next string. So up, down, look where my downstroke is. Pretty far above the strings, no way I'm going to accidentally plow into something, and then I just turn around and do that upstroke. So again, if you're practicing these parts from this power-up, experiment with just little tilts like that. I know it's hard to see my hand because of the angle that the video is at, but my hand actually looks like this. When I'm moving down, it's a little bit of a tilt, like that. And then on the way back up, when I lead with upstrokes, again, a little bit of a tilt that way. Like that, just a little bit. Again, you don't want to like super exaggerate it because then your hand's going to be moving a lot more than it needs to. Just a little bit of a tilt down if you're leading with downstrokes, a little bit of a tilt up like this if you're leading with upstrokes, and that will allow your hand to maintain simply the back and forth motion without having to lift to clear the next string so you don't plow into it. Tilt the hand, do the same motion. Your pick will end up high above the strings like this, allowing you to simply just tilt your hand down, grab that next string. So experiment with this stuff because I think it's super valuable. Here's this technique in action at a slow tempo and then a faster tempo. All right, so let's move on to these backing tracks. Today, we're going to be playing over 2 backing tracks. The first one is going to be the exact same thing as we did in part 1, except with the minor shapes like I mentioned earlier. So 1 repetition of the shape leading with downstrokes, stopping, 1 repetition of the shape leading with upstrokes, stopping, and then we play one into the other. I'll recap that one more time. So leading with downstrokes. Stopping, leading with upstrokes, doubling this note to offset. Then we do one into the other exactly like we did in part 1. That's going to be the first video, and we'll run that, I think, from 80 to 140. And then the second video, we will play both of those things, the major shape and the minor shape combined. This will pretty much be sort of what we're going to do in the final video, except we're stopping in between the repetitions to give you a moment to breathe. So that will sound like this. We're going to be going leading with downstrokes, right into leading with upstrokes for the major shape, and then immediately into the minor shape, doing the same thing, and then we'll stop. That sounds like this. Major shape first. Right into the minor. And then we stop, restart, etc. So really important when you're coming down that major shape to prep the fingering for the minor shape. So if you're coming down major like this for that last repetition, you want to see my hand right there? Notice what stretch I'm playing. I'm prepping pointer and ring finger, right? You might want to play pointer and pinky because that's sort of what you just came down with. You just did this. You're probably just going to want to do that, but remember, to get that stretch up top, I think it's better to prep with pointer and ring finger so that when you get to the D string for the minor shape, the stretch is already there. So make sure when you are coming down that major shape, you are prepping a fingering that makes sense for you to continue with that minor shape. This track, I think, is going to run from 100 to 150, so we're starting a little faster with this one, but it will prep you a little bit better for the final track that we play. So those are the tracks that we're going to play. Practice this stuff, get it down, work out the kinks for the fingering, work out the kinks for the picking, see if angling your pick, like we talked about, will help running through this type of exercise. Come back to this part of the video, and we'll get started with these tracks. That does it for part 2 of this 2 notes per string power-up. As usual, if you enjoy this type of instruction material, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below, and I'll see you all in the final part.